Hello and welcome to JavaScript Marathon Training presented by This.Labs. My name is Sarah Renaud with This.Labs and I will be your host today. We're wrapping up this day of marathon with type-safe databases with Prisma. Training you today is Ryan Chenkie, who does GraphQL DevRel at Prisma. If you have any questions or comments after today's session, feel free to reach out to Ryan directly on Twitter at Ryan Chenkie, shown at the bottom of your screen. Welcome, Ryan. And of course, we couldn't do this without our sponsors. Our sponsor today is This.Labs, your partners in modern digital transformation, specializing in mentorship, consulting, training, and staff augmentation for enterprise organizations. Find out more at this.labs.com or send us an email at hi@this.co. Do you find keeping up with the constant evolving technologies a struggle? Do you want to bring your team up to speed on one of the latest technologies? This.Labs offers personalized training programs to suit your organizational needs, ensuring you and your company stay on the leading edge. Contact us today at hi@this.co to set up your complimentary needs assessment. Upcoming events this Friday, GraphQL Madrid meetup number 3 is happening at 12 p.m. Eastern. Also, check out our global meetups in Angular, GraphQL, React, and Vue. More details are available at this.co. And a big announcement, we are back next month. JavaScript Marathon returns Wednesday, October 28th. Check out our specific sessions by heading to our blog at this.labs.com. And with that, I will turn it on over to Ryan. Hey, Ryan, just go ahead and hit that unmute button.
There
you go. All set.
There it is. I was talking to myself for a little while there. Sorry about that. As Sarah said, my name is Ryan. I'm a developer advocate at Prisma, and Prisma is all about making working with databases a lot easier for you as a developer. And in particular, if you are a TypeScript developer or a JavaScript developer, and if you're working with Node.js, Prisma's got a really great suite of tools for you to be just way quicker at working with databases, taking the pain out of working with databases, taking a lot of the pain out of it. And so we're going to go over today how to make type-safe databases. So why the focus on type safety? Type safety is becoming a hotter topic in the web development industry. We're seeing TypeScript pop up in lots of places now. So, whereas maybe it started to get popular in the Angular community years back, now it's starting to go into React. React developers are loving TypeScript now, as are Node.js developers. So you're seeing a lot of frameworks and a lot of tooling that supports TypeScript on the server as well. And Prisma and the suite of tools that we've got is kind of aimed in this direction to bring type safety to your database access. So whereas your database might have the columns might be typed in certain ways. Maybe you've got certain columns that are varchar or text or int or whatever. When it comes time to access your database in your editor, you really don't get a good sense of what you can query for in what type, what you can insert into your database, whether certain types can go in or can't go in, and that sort of thing. So Prisma provides what you can think of, I guess, is sort of an ORM, although there are some nuanced differences as to why it's not quite an ORM. Prisma gives you basically what looks like this nice API over your database. And you get a sense of it here on the Prisma homepage, prisma.io. And so this is all open source stuff. You can download this from NPM and you can get up and running with database access really easily. And in fact, that's what we will go over today. We're going to take a look at how to basically create an API with Prisma as the data access layer. And if you would like to follow along with the completed code, it's here. I've got this repository. It's at my GitHub, so /Chenkie and then /this.-prisma. That's where you can get the code for this. And I will, maybe I'll just throw the link here into the chat just so everyone's got it. So I'll come over here And oh, it actually looks like I can't put it into the comments from here, but I will send it over to Sarah, and hopefully Sarah can put that into the chat somehow. So we are going to basically start from zero. We're going to go from the bottom up. We are going to build out what we've got here in this server.ts file. This is the API for kind of an e-commerce thing. So something that deals with products, something that deals with reviews on those products, and something that also deals with categories for those products. And the idea is to demonstrate how you can get to what looks like a pretty kind of production oriented sort of database access setup with Prisma. That includes different kinds of relations. So you've got like your standard data in your tables. You've got relations like one-to-many relations, and you've got relations that are many-to-many as well. So we'll see how these all work out with Prisma. And we're going to do it in TypeScript. We're going to use Express to create this really simple API, and we're going to be focusing mainly on Prisma. So with that in mind, I invite you to kind of do a couple things. Check out prisma.io to get a sense of what Prisma is, what it does. You can go to Prisma's GitHub as well. You can check out Prisma on GitHub. All of this stuff is open source. And you can, try the Prisma 5-minute thing here if you want. But since you're here, I recommend just kind of hanging out with me and following along. So with that in mind, let's go over to, I've got my editor open here, and I'm going to open a terminal. This is just like a blank canvas, basically. This is just an empty directory, and we'll start it from the ground up. So we can do, I'm just going to do one thing here, do npm init, and we'll pass the Y flag just to say yes to everything. So we've got our package.json file here, and we'll install a few things. We're going to be working with TypeScript in this in this little workshop that we're doing. So we can install the things that we need for TypeScript. We can do npm install d to save them to dev dependencies, and we'll want TypeScript as a dev dependency. We will want, what else? @types/node. So the typings for a node environment. And we want something called ts node dev. And this is a this is basically a way to watch for the changes that you make in your project and restart the TypeScript server to reserve your project. So if you're familiar with NodeMon, it's kind of like that, but it's oriented particularly towards Node. So we can install those, and then we can install a couple more things. So we've got those dependencies. What else do we need? We need the Prisma stuff now. So there's a couple things that we need for Prisma. The first is going to be the CLI. So the Prisma CLI gives you command line tools that it lets you do stuff with the Prisma command. So Prisma's got this fully featured CLI. You can generate things, as we're going to see. You can work with the migrate command to migrate your database. We're going to see that as well. Prisma comes in a CLI package, and it looks like this. We can do npm install. Again, this will be a dev dependency, and it looks like this, @prisma/CLI. And there are a couple different ways you can do this. You could install the Prisma CLI globally, so that would work. You would be able to then use it in your project. But what we recommend is that you apply the CLI on a per project basis. And the reason is you might have different versions of Prisma in different projects on your same machine. So you wouldn't necessarily want to use the same globally installed Prisma CLI for all of your projects, because then you're going to end up at some point with version clashes. So save it as a dev dependency. This will go into dev dependencies. There it is. And we can make use of it. If you're wondering, how do I use something from dev dependencies, and how do I use a command right within my project? You can use npx. npx Prisma is going to look first into your dependencies of your local project. And if it doesn't find it there, it will then go out to remotely get the Prisma CLI. So you can use it in both fashions. If you don't have the CLI installed, or if you do, you can run npx Prisma. So that's what we'll be using today. So now for non-dev dependencies, things that are going to be shipped for production, we would do npm install @prisma/client. And the Prisma client is basically what you see when you take a look at this. right here where we do await Prisma users create, this kind of thing. This is the Prisma client. So that's what we'll need to actually make use of our database. So we'll install the Prisma client. We're going to be working with Express, so we can install Express. A couple other things, maybe just actually one other, will be body parser, so that we can accept a JSON payload to insert some data with. So npm install all of that stuff, and this will head into our dependencies now. There we go. And we can do npx TypeScript init. TSC init is what I'm looking for. This is going to just initialize, you know what? It is -- init, I believe. There we go. That's going to initialize a tsconfig file. Tsconfig, it gives options for how you would configure your TypeScript environment. And it will give you ways to sort of enable certain features or disable features or what have you. So let's do a quick test here. Let's see if we can get up and running. We'll do server.ts. I just created this file, server.ts, and I just want to make sure that my ts node dev is going to give me what I want. So maybe I'll just say function start, and I'll console.log in that function, and then I will call for start. And if I then go into my package.json file, and I go into my scripts, and I say, instead of that test script, which I'm not going to use for now, I say ts node dev on server.ts. This is where I want to run that dev command. And then I run npm run dev. Let's see what we get. There we go. We've console.logged hi. So I know that things are working here. So that's great. So what we can next do is let's take a look at getting just a basic Express API wired up. And then we're going to move into how to get Prisma going. So for this, we can do import star as express from express. I'm not sure if there's a better way to import it, but I know that we need to, the exports that they give in the Express package doesn't allow you to import it in a different way. So I think it's just like this. We can say, give us an app, which is going to be equal to express. And something there, I wonder. I was getting a red line. I don't know. We'll see if that persists. What is the error that we're getting here? Cannot find declaration for Express. Did I install it properly? You have it. Express from Express. Well, we'll see what happens here. Let's move on. I don't know exactly why it's giving us that, but we'll see. We're just going to do a test here. So we're going to say when we go to slash, we want to send back a response. So the typical Express setup is going to have your function here, your callback, where you can say response, send hello, for example. And then we can do app.listen. On some port, maybe 3001. And so declare bits value is never used. Response implicitly has the any type. And that's because in a TypeScript world, we have to apply types to things. And so what we can do for that is we can import request and response from Express if we can get access to it. And it says it's not in there. So I'm not sure exactly what's happening, but let's move on. We'll kind of fix that as we go. So REQ is going to be typed as request. We're type hinting that as request. RES, which is for the response, we will type hint that as response. So we've got issues with our TypeScript compiler here, not finding declarations for Express. We're going to see here what we can do with that. Let's run dev, and probably we'll get errors. Yep, so import all as express from Express is not happening for us. And I'm going to take a look in here to see what's going on. I've got dependencies Express, and I just wonder if there's something missing that I am looking over. I'm looking over at the code that I had prepared for this. And one thing I'm going to just try here is remove this tsconfig. Let's see if anything changes for us. Let's do npm run dev once more. Okay, I think this is working better. I think there's something in the tsconfig, which I didn't have configured in quite the same way in the in the prepared demo that I had on GitHub. Something is going on there. So in the meantime, let's do this. Console.log listening on localhost 3001. And let's see. Yep, listening on localhost 3001. Okay, so we've got that. Let's see if we can make a request there and just get our message back. I'm over here in this REST editor REST client Insomnia. If I send a GET request over there, we get our hello message. All right, cool. So the Express is working, which is great. The tsconfig is not there. ts-node-dev is going to take care of wiring up some configuration for us. At least I think that's how it works. And in the meantime, we're not going to use that tsconfig. We can just leave that bare for now. All right. So what to do next? Well, we want to get Prisma wired up and get a database going. So Prisma supports 3-ish databases right now. There's Postgres, probably the most popular option. There's MySQL. And there is SQLite. So if you're not super familiar, Postgres, MySQL, SQLite, these are all relational databases. SQLite is a file system database. It's good to use for like prototyping and for development and stuff like that. I think you'll see a lot of people say don't use it for production, but I've come across a couple of projects recently that are very successful using SQLite in production. So who knows, maybe it's something that's useful for production as well. We'll use SQLite today, and we will see how to get connected to this SQLite database. So first thing to do is to initialize Prisma in this kind of bare bones node project. And to do that, we can do npx prisma init. And if we do that, we get some stuff that's happening here in the project for us. So what have we got? We've got this Prisma folder. We've got a schema.prisma. You'll see that you get an icon for it, even if you're in VS Code here. There's an environment file for it. It's got a database URL. And there is an example. Actually, sorry, there's no model example, but it comes with some stuff scaffolded for us. This schema.prisma file is what we call the language it uses is the Prisma schema language. So it's a DSL, if you will, specifically for Prisma. So DSL, domain specific language, and we call it PSL, Prisma schema language. And we use this to basically define the whole shape of our database. So any tables you want to put into your database, you will model them out here. And this is what we're going to work with today to model our data. A couple things to do, though. You'll see that when we initialize Prisma, it comes with this database URL that points to a Postgres database. So if you're working with Postgres, great. You can put in your Postgres connection parameters here. So that works well. But we're going to work with this local dev.db, and I'm going to put it just within the Prisma directory. So dev.db goes right there. And what we want to tell Prisma is that instead of using Postgres as the provider, let's use SQLite. SQLite, SQLite, I'm not sure exactly the right way to say that, but there you have it. And instead of pointing to this environment file, which has a certain environment variable for database URL, that's what we get in here, database URL. Instead of using that, let's point it directly to that file we've got. And the way we do that here within the Prisma schema language is it looks like this. A little bit odd looking, but you would do file, 1:, and then dot, and then /dev.db. That's going to point now to this database that we've essentially just created. So there is the bare bones of our Prisma schema, our Prisma model, but we need to give it some definition for what we want to use as our tables. And to do that, we can start to model out our tables. So this is going to be like an e-com kind of app where we've got like information about products. So why don't we start by modeling out a product? And so we've got this model keyword, and then we give it the name of the table we want, is essentially how it works. Conventions here are that you would uppercase your table names with Prisma. And once we have this defined, you put some curly braces to open it up. And it's kind of like an object. You can think of it. It looks different. We'll see how it looks different. But you can kind of think of this as like an object with properties that you're going to define within. So why don't we start building this out just in a bare bones fashion, and then we'll also add to it as we go. First thing that we need is an ID. So most tables are going to need some kind of ID. You need to generally mark your tables with one field that is like the primary that you would use as an ID. So we'll make one called ID. We want to say the type is string, and we want to use this ID decorator to say that this field is going to be primary. This is going to be our ID for the table. And then we can give it a default value. If you're using integer values, you might want to like auto increment your IDs, and you can do that if you're using ints. We want to use, at least I want to use, something that's a little bit more robust perhaps than ints here. I want to use a universal unique ID. There's a couple different things you can do here. You can use a UUID. You can also use a CUID, and that's a little bit shorter. That's like a collision resistant universal ID. But if you want something really robust, you can use a UUID, and you're kind of guaranteed more or less that you're not going to get collisions with this. If you were doing, like if you wanted, say, an int for your ID field, you can do this. You can say the default should auto increment. So there's this auto increment function here, which will tell your it'll tell your table essentially just auto increment that integer field. But in our case, let's stick with this string ID, which is a UUID. Okay, so let's add some fields. Let's add name. That's going to be a string. Let's add description. A string as well. Let's add price. That'll be an int. And why int? Why not float? We could do a float if we wanted to, but it is recommended, at least I've seen, I've been bit by this before, that we store our price information, currency information, as an integer and have it be in cents. So if you wanted something that was $50, you have 5,000 cents instead of 50.00, 50.32. Instead of doing that, you would do 5032, and then you just basically on your front end and anywhere that you're doing math on things, you have to account for this, but you would just stick that decimal in at runtime kind of thing. The reason for that is you will run into math issues. Eventually, you're going to get like super long. If you're doing math on your currencies, you're going to get like problems because of the problems that JavaScript gives us when we're doing math. You're going to get issues doing those calculations at some point. So if you've used Stripe, for example, maybe you're familiar with this, they give you currency values in cents, basically. So that field is going to be an integer, 4 cents. Let's have a SKU, which is something that we use to mark our product as unique, basically. Like it's I don't know if you're familiar with SKUs, but SKU is basically the number on the back, right, near the barcode. That SKU can be used in some way here. Conceptually, we can say that should be a unique field in this case. We don't want to have two products that have the same SKU. A couple other things we can look at would be a created at time. And instead of like a string value or something like that, we'll use date time. That's another of the types that Prisma gives us. And for this, we can default it to now. Now is just going to put the current time in place. And then maybe same with updated at as well. Okay, so this is shaping up to be a pretty comprehensive table for our product. We've got these fields that we want. Let's save that. When we hit save, we get auto formatting happening. That is, if you have the Prisma extension installed. I'll point you to it here. So Prisma gives you syntax highlighting, formatting, auto-completion, etc. So if you're in VS Code, check out the Prisma extension and you'll be on your way. Okay, so this table is modeled. We need to now get our database into the game. So our Prisma model knows about this this table we want, but we haven't actually put it in yet in any way. So we can do that if we use Prisma Migrate. The way that it looks is this. We do Prisma, npx Prisma migrate, and we want to save a migration, and then we have to pass this experimental flag. The reason we do that is that this feature is still under an experimental state. It's kind of subject to change. You're free to use it, but just be aware that things might change, and that it's considered experimental. All of the features you might want or the way that it operates may not be exactly as anticipated, and subject to change. But if we run this, we will be asked for the name of the migration. I'll call it init. When we run it, we get this migrations folder. And in the migrations folder, if we take a look at this README, this basically details the steps that are that Prisma will go through to create our table for us. So this is the SQL that will be generated to get our table into the database. To do that, as we can see here, run Prisma Migrate up to make it happen. So we will do npx Prisma Migrate up experimental. And with that, we now have that table in our database. If we look at the SQLite file here, it doesn't look all that appealing. It's just kind of like gibberish in a lot of ways. But one thing that we can do to take a look at our data, if we want to, is we can use Prisma Studio. Prisma Studio is you can think of it as like the modern day PHP MyAdmin. To get that, you would do npx Prisma Studio. All right, and so that has come over into my other browser that is off screen. So what I'll do is come over here and plug it in here. Localhost quadruple 5. I've got these models. Right now it's just a product, and I've got no rows in it. There's no data in here right now, but we will put some in. However, this is a spot that you can look at your data, you can manipulate it, you can do whatever you want right here. Okay, so why don't we get moving creating some data? Let's start by creating a product. Let's do that. So I'm just looking off screen at the code that I've got complete, and yeah, that's a sensible place to start rather than getting some data. We will start by creating some data, and then we will get some data. One last thing to do though, and we got Prisma Studio. I'm going to open up a new terminal here. We want to do Prisma Generate. Prisma Generate, oops, I need to do npx Prisma Generate. So we've got some instruction here that we can now import the Prisma clients, and we can new it up and work with it. Prisma Generate, what that does is it's going to take your Prisma models, and it's going to, since we have a generator provider called Prisma Client.js, it's going to take all of the stuff that we've defined here in our model, and it's basically going to turn it into like a nice ORM for us. If we go into node modules and we go into this .prisma folder, what we can see in there is, if we search for type product, here is the TypeScript type for the product model that we just created. And so this is kind of at the heart of what lets our Prisma client that we're about to use, it's what lets it know what it can do, like what kind of data you can put into your inserts, what kind of data you can query for, and all that stuff. So to see it at work, we're over here in server.ts, and I am going to do import Prisma client from @prisma/client. And then I need an instance of it. So I can do a constant called Prisma, and that's equal to a new Prisma client. Now, Prisma, if I just even start typing Prisma dot right here, if I'm in VS Code or anywhere that gives me autocomplete, I can see what's available on it. So there's these methods that are prefixed with $. Those are kind of like, I don't know what you would call them, Prisma methods that you would use to like connect or disconnect from your database or stuff like that. You've got those, which are distinct from methods that you would use methods, or I guess properties you would use to access your actual data. And you can already see that one of them here is product. So this gives us right away a sense of what we can do. We can aggregate product stuff. We can find many, find one. We can create And that's basically what allows us to be really type safe and really effective with our databases here. What we can do is basically just do Prisma dot, and we can, without even typing anything, we can just go through and sort of not auto select, but we can manually select from this list these auto-populated properties or methods that we might want to use. It makes us be very type safe because we won't be able to do anything in our database that we aren't allowed to do, essentially. So let's do a little API, a little kind of REST API that we'll mock up here. We'll do request, type hint that as request. We'll do res for response. And then we will, I guess what do we do? Promise void. That's sort of the return type here. We're going to be working with JSON responses in this way. What am I missing here? This is giving me a function and he must have return value. Okay, I'm gonna take this out for a sec. That was the correct type hint, but we'll move on. We'll see. Let's go into a try catch block. And this way we'll be able to respond with any errors that come up. What do I want to do? I want to take some data from the body that's going to come in. For that, I'm going to want body parser. That's kind of this library that helps for Express for you to get the information off the payload, off the body. So import all as body parser from body parser. And you have to do, what is it, app? Use body parser. It's like a middleware for Express. Okay, so the data should come in on the body. We can do const data equals request.body. And you know what, for now, let's just console.log the data. And then I want to do respond with JSON that says done, something like that. And then in the catch block, we can respond with a status of 400 with some JSON that says message, something went wrong. Something like that. Okay, so as long as my node process is still going, which I think it is, should be good to go. Let's go over to Insomnia here. We'll send a post request to 3001/products. And let's include some stuff here in the JSON payload. So test and hello. We'll send that. We get the message done. Back over here, we get our data here in the payload. So that's great. So now we can basically include the information that we might want for a product. So we want a name, and I'll have a product called Coffee Maker. And description. Hopefully everyone can see this okay. I don't think I can zoom in anymore in Insomnia for some reason. So best coffee maker. What else do we have for our? We got name, description, price. So price is an integer. We'll do price is 5,000 cents. Once more, we're doing cents instead of dollars here, so that we don't have to work with floats. Price SKU. All right, so the SKU is going to be whatever, something like that. And that should be good for now. I think that'll be good. So if we try sending that, again, it's going to come over here. So we're getting our data coming from our request. And now we can go put it into our database. The way that we do this is we call the Prisma client. I'm going to type in, not type in, but rather say this is an async function here. And I'm going to say await, actually, let's put it on a constant, const product equals await Prisma product.create. And then I need to pass it data. And so what's really cool is when you go to use these methods like create, you can kind of get a sense of what you can do here if you do control spacebar. So, you know, if you kind of go into this object that you've got to pass it and you do control spacebar, you get an idea of what's available for you. And the first thing we see here is we've got this data key. So if we were, you know, doing things the hard way, we would say we would pass to data, we'd pass an object and we'd have name, and that would come from data.name. coming in basically up here. But that's not what we want in this case. Since we have everything for data coming from the request body, we can just kind of pass it in right here as data. And of course, it doesn't seem to be liking it right now. I think what I'll do, I'll try type hinting this as any for now. Yeah. So if I had an interface, I could do something like this: interface product data. And that could look something like this, where I do name as a string, and I've got description, string, stuff like this. Pretty sure I could do instead of interface, I'll do type product data equals that. Product data is how I can type hint that. It doesn't like it. Not too sure there. I think the request body, it's expecting something else. It must be. In any case, I'll just type hint it as any, just to move on with the demo. We've got a product there. Instead of passing back this message, let's pass back product. All right, so that should work. Let's give it a shot. Go over here and we hit go. What we get back is the record that we just created. So we've got this ID, we've got the name, etc., the created at, updated at, and everything like that. If we take a look at our Prisma Studio, it's there as well, just in the same fashion, but now it's in kind of tabular view. So cool, we've got records going in. Let's do for ourselves maybe an endpoint that will give us all this data. So I'm going to make use of this one that I've already got for that initial GET request that I was working with. And instead of sending back a message, I will try to catch this. Get an error, respond with JSON status 400. And we'll send back the error for now. Or actually, I guess a message. But we will otherwise want to return await Prisma product find many. We'll do find many. And that's going to essentially give us, unless we limit it in some way, which we can do, we can select, we can skip, I think we can take, is that the... Yeah, take a certain number, that sort of thing. You've got these options for filtering. Unless we do something like that, we will just get our products. So let's do that. Post request, we'll change that over for a get request. And now, looks like something isn't working. Products. What did I do wrong? Return, await, get. I've got nothing here. Run dev again. I'll just take that out for good measure. We're doing a get request to 3001/products. It is not liking it. Of course, because I am not responding so I do a lot of these demos where I'm working with not in an express environment. And in an express environment, what you want to do is you want to put things on something like a constant and say products equals await. You'll await those products, and then you have to use res.json or .send. And I often forget that. My mistake. So response.json with the products. All right, trying again. There we go. This is an array now, and it's going to have any and all products that we want to get back. All right, so we have, what, 22 minutes left, something like that. Thinking we probably won't get through absolutely everything that we are showing in the repo, but what I do want to show is how to deal with relations here. So relations with relational databases, probably a pretty common thing to do. And Prisma's got some conventions that make this really easy to work with. So if we're over in schema.prisma, let's think about another table that we would want to have, and we would want to start to relate together with our product information. So one that I'm thinking of will be, what's a good one to show? A review. So let's give ourselves a table for reviews. People love to leave reviews on comments, and we will we'll link this up to a particular product. Let's give ourselves the same convention here for the ID. It's going to be a string. We're going to mark it as ID and give the default as a universal unique ID. What else do we want on a review? Title, string. We want a body for the review. That will be a string as well. We can do the same created at and updated at times, I think. Put those down here. Okay, so there's the basic structure of the review. And the way that it works with Prisma relations, and I invite you to check out, it's pretty, I guess, like comprehensive the way that relations work. There's some reading to do on it because there's nuances between the different relations and how they all kind of work together. I invite you to this document here. This is at our docs, and you can check out relations. If you just Google for Prisma relations, you'll get to this doc. It talks about all the different ones you might want to do. So the way that it works basically with Prisma relations is there's going to be something that exists in your database to take care of the relationships between tables. And there's going to be something that exists only in the Prisma world. The Prisma client is where you'll see it, where it's going to surface. There's going to be two things at play here. The way to get started with a relation, though, is you'll want to say that You'll basically want to say that one of your tables needs to relate in some way to another table. And to think about this conceptually, you might want to think that, okay, I've got a product, and a product, I know it wants to have reviews. And what would I put the type as here? Would I say it's like an array of something, or like an array of strings or something like that? And when you work with relations, what you would do, since you have your table already defined, you would say, I want that to be of type review, and I want it to be a one-to-many relation. If you wanted it to be a one-to-one relation, you could just do something like this. You would say one product has one review. But in this case, you want it to be a one-to-many. One product has many reviews. And that is accessed by using this kind of array-like notation here. You say this is a list. This is an array. So if you have the Prisma extension installed, what you'll get when you save this, I'm just going to hit Command Save. What you'll see is I've got some stuff that popped into my review spot down here. And I've got two things. I've got this product, which points me up to my product model, uses this relation decorator to then map together how these two tables reference each other. So that's one thing I get. The other thing I get is product ID, which is of type string. And the way it works here is this guy here, product, which points to something of type product. This exists only in the Prisma world. So this is what's used in our Prisma client to help us to know how we can put data together, essentially. But product ID is something that will exist in your database. So a couple things I like to do. I like to remove this. What Prisma does is it capitalizes, basically works with your model name and will capitalize the name of the key that you're going to access. I like to just make that lowercase myself, just to be consistent with everything else. And yeah, I think that about does it. This the question mark here, that will mean that it's optional. So in this case, a review has to belong to a product. So we're going to take away that question mark. So a review has to have a product, but a product can have 0 or more reviews, essentially, is how it works out. But if you did have a relation that it was optional, you could use the question mark in both places, saying that it's an optional thing. Okay, so yeah, that's how you do relations. Whenever we make changes like this, we want to migrate our database and kind of start things up again. npx Prisma migrate and save. Again, experimental is what we pass for now. Name of migration, adds, reviews. When we do that, in the migrations folder, we get this second migrations folder now. The second migration folder, I should say, which has instructions on how to insert that table. And to get up and running with it, we do Prisma migrate up, experimental. So that's now in the database. Very cool. We finally will run Prisma npx Prisma generate. And that will construct the types for us so that we know what we are doing here in when we actually create our endpoints. So we've got a couple minutes here before we'll take questions. And so we won't get all the way through all these endpoints that I've got, but what we'll do is we'll create a review and associate it with a product. So let's see. I'm looking through just to see which endpoint I want to demo here. And keep in mind that you've got this GitHub URL. We posted it in the comments, and take a look there if you want to see the rest of this repo basically and how to do these things. Okay, so let's take a look at how to basically post a review about a product. What I'll do is go into server TS. I want to have a new endpoint down here. We'll call it app.post, and we'll post 2 reviews. So some endpoint that we can post reviews. And request is typed as request and response as response. And now we can take in some data and basically pass it off to Prisma to work with. Same error message can be sent back if we run into an error. And we can do this. We have our const data equals request.body. And now we want to take that data. We'll have a couple necessary elements in it. We'll take that data and then we'll pass it off to Prisma. So we want to create a review, and that's going to be like this. Await Prisma.review. Notice that we didn't have review as an available property here before, but now it's there because we generated our Prisma client. We want to create one. And we want to pass in this. We want to say data is going to be in a certain shape. If we're in here in this data key, we can do control.spacebar to see which properties we need to pass. Anything that's got a question mark is optional, and anything that doesn't is required. And so we will basically not be able to run this unless, like, things won't compile unless we get rid of this red squiggly, essentially. So we're going to have a title, and that's going to be equal to data.title. We'll have, and I'm going to type in this as any, just because my system is making that right now. We are going to have a body, data.body, and we'll have a product. So because there's a relation at play here, this looks a little bit different. We have to do what's called connecting these 2 tables together when we create a new record for review. So it looks like this. We do products, and we will do connect. We will do an ID, and that's going to come from data.productID. And this is something I'm going to supply in my request to reviews, and we'll see that in just a second. So constant called review, we're awaiting that, and then we can do response with JSON, and we will pass back that review. Okay, so the data I need to pass here, I'm just being cheap about it right now. I'm not actually type hinting this as it should be. This should probably look a bit different, a little bit better, but it's going to work for now. We need title, body, and a product ID. So I will go back over here to Prisma Studio, and I'm going to grab this ID. I'm going to copy this over, and this is what we're going to supply when we make a post request to 3001/reviews. So the stuff I want here is going to be title. This is a great coffee maker. Description, is that what I had? No, body. The best coffee maker in the world. And product ID, finally. Okay, so in theory this should work. Let's hit go. Not connect to server. Boo. What's going on? Looks like there was an issue, but maybe there's not anymore. Let's see. Okay, so that's going. Let's try this again. There we go. So we've got things created. We can see that here in Prisma Studio. If we, I think we have to basically refresh this. You know what? We might have to do this instead. Might have to go npx Prisma Studio once more to get Studio wired up. And then we can go and refresh. There we go. There's our review. We've got our single review. Cool. So if we take a look at that call to, I'll do my get request over to products. I've got my product data coming back, but what I don't have yet with it would be the reviews. So we can fix that up if we go back to this endpoint that we've got for products. Let's go to our get endpoint for products, and we'll find many. And what we want to do is include something. So you'll see if I started typing there, letter I get include. Again, you can do Control Spacebar to see what's available. I can include, and then I open up a new object and I say I want to include reviews. I want to say that's true. And back over here, if we hit that again, cool. We've got our reviews coming through. Something I don't necessarily like about my reviews is I've got stuff like product ID coming back. I've got, created at, updated at. I don't know if that's really necessary. So I can change things so I only select ID, title, and body, for example. The way that I would do that is instead of saying reviews true, I could say reviews, that's an object, and I want to select certain fields. And I want to select ID true, title true, and body true. And notice, like, it won't let me put anything in there that isn't valid. I just get these red squigglies because the Prisma client knows what's available here for us to actually select. So that's really cool. That's one point of it that's like super helpful when developing. So instead of like going back to your models and taking a look at what's available or guessing about the way that your data is shaped together, it's super helpful to have that, have everything there in autocomplete for you. Okay, hit go again, and there we go. We've got just the info we wanted. So what time do we have? We have basically 9 minutes left, which is probably a good point. There's not enough time to go into the rest of these things. Maybe what I will do, just quickly, we won't be able to get all the way through it. I will just give a quick demo on like many-to-many relations, and I'll invite everyone to go check out the repo to find out about those. Say you had a category, model category, and it had an ID, which is a string. We have @ID, @default is UUID, and you had a name for it. And you had, maybe that's it for now. If you wanted to say that many different products belong to many different categories, that's this many-to-many relationship that you would need some kind of pivot table for, or some kind of like, this intermediary table that you use for your data. And Prisma helps a lot with that. It's very easy to work with many-to-many relations. Basically, if you wanted to do that, you could just go like this. You could say, my products have categories. That's going to point to the category type, and it has many possible categories. Then category is going to have many possible products. And if you, product, singular, if you do that, you basically for free are going to get a pivot table that Prisma is going to manage for you. And you can start to relate your products and categories together in a many-to-many fashion through a pivot table that you don't really have to do much else on. It's kind of just managed for you. So take a look at the repo for more on that, to see the endpoints on how to put those together. Again, the repo is here. I've got it at my GitHub. You can go to my last name /this.-prisma. And all the stuff we did is going to be in there. Cool. So we have just a couple minutes. I think at this point it makes sense to do some questions. If anyone's got questions, please put them in the comments, and we'll go through and try to get some of these questions as we go. Sarah, I don't know if you have any format you want to.
Yeah, if you want to look at them and I can throw them up there, we can do that. That works for me.
Sure, yeah. So let's go with this first one here. How do you do indexing with Prisma? So indexing with Prisma, you can basically add indexes to your database manually. I don't think there's anything for doing it through Prisma. Let me check though. Prisma indexing. At least a doc that I can point people towards. Yeah, indexes. Basically, you're going to create them sort of on your own with SQL, essentially. I think that's basically right now anyway. how it's going to work. I'll pass this link over to you, Sarah. Maybe you can put that into
Sure.
the comments. Yeah, so we have guidance on it, but I don't think you'll find anything directly through Prisma to do that right now. Okay, on that object, if you do control space, does it, what did it say? Does it list those key pairs? Which key pairs do we mean? I wonder. Does it list those key pairs? So if I were to do, maybe, I'm assuming maybe we're talking about this. When I say object, I'm talking about the reviews object. Maybe this one. Is that the one within products? If I'm doing this, Anthony? I wonder if this is, I hope this is the one you're talking about here. We'll see. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so yeah, if you're here in your include, let's see what we get. So control space, the property that's available is reviews. Then what do I want? Control space. Not much helpful if I haven't put the next bit in here, like the pairing for it. You don't really see, at least the way that I've got things set up here in VS Code. Maybe this differs in different environments or whatever. I at least have to know what to put, either true, I guess, or an object. If you're in that object, I think that's where you get your property. Yeah, it is a bummer. It would be nice if you had something that said like reviews, what can it be? Maybe there's a way. I don't know. If someone happens upon that, I'd be curious to know. So let me know. But yeah, it's at least half the battle is had for you. So there it is. All right. Did we get another one?
I think that is it for now. If you guys have any more questions, get a hold of Ryan on Twitter. Be happy to answer those for you. Ryan, do you have anything else?
I invite people to check out Prisma. Lots of cool stuff on the roadmap. It just really simplifies working with relational databases. If you are tired of writing SQL manually, if you use Prisma, you may never need to write SQL again. And there's nothing against writing SQL. In fact, if you wanted to bust out of the Prisma world and start doing just raw SQL, I mean, you can do what? Const products equals await Prisma.$raw, query raw, or execute raw, and you can pass like some arbitrary SQL in here. That kind of defeats the purpose of Prisma. The purpose of Prisma is to keep you type safe, make sure you're accessing your database in the way that you should be. So I invite you to give it a spin, check it out. Lots of great community stuff happening. If you want to get into the Prisma Slack, it's prisma.slack.com. If you want to join up there, feel free to come out, and I'm happy to help on that. Anything on GraphQL. We didn't have time to talk about GraphQL today, but if there's any kind of GraphQL questions as well, I'm happy to chat with anyone on that. And maybe if you wanted to link my Twitter there for Anthony, Sarah, if you could.
Yes, absolutely. That is Ryan's handle on Twitter. So go ahead and get a hold of him if you need to. Ryan, thank you so much for being a part of JavaScript Marathon today. We really appreciate your time. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. That is a wrap for September JavaScript Marathon, but we are back October 28th. So save the dates. We're releasing that information soon, and these videos will be available soon as well. So everyone have a great day, great night, wherever you are from, and we will see you all next month.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.